can be able to assess the impact of each intervention by feeding one intervention one by one into the model and see how it is and see its impact and how it is affecting the recoveries and the deaths and also other predictions. So this was my model where I had the susceptible. Those are those were.
Sorry to take you short.
Yes, please.
For us to follow very well, kindly present to us the research question before we can comprehend this very well. The research question and the objective you're trying to achieve. Just refreshing us, you know, it is around 3 or 4 weeks since you last presented, so we can't easily remember everything.
Okay, let me try to get the...
Because you also agree that how long have you taken without talking to us about this? Isn't it around 3 weeks? No, I think 4.
No, it is just 2 weeks.
2?
Yes.
Okay. You remind us. Let's have another. You remind us and take us through.
Maybe I'm looking for the presentation. I don't know if another presenter can take it on as I look for the presentation because I switched a laptop and I had only this one to share.
That's okay. So you can stop sharing.
Okay.
Yeah. Robert, you're welcome, and the other members who joined us. Rebecca, do you want to go next? As the Noor organizes her work.
All right, let me share my screen.
Liz, you'll be preparing to shoot next after Rebecca.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I'll go over the study again so that we remember what I'm going to be sharing. So my project is on impact of long-acting antiretroviral therapy on viral load suppression for adolescents living with HIV in Uganda. I don't know if I should go over this again or I go straight to the objectives.
You take her through. Take her through. Okay. You have 15 minutes.
All right. In 2020, 1.5 million adolescents were living with HIV globally, 85% of which were in sub-Saharan Africa and 9% were in Uganda. The progress towards the 95-95-95 target has been much slower among adolescents living with HIV. For instance, in 2020, 71% of adolescents living with HIV that were on ART had viral load suppression in Uganda. A major cause of viral load non-suppression is poor adherence to ART. And poor adherence to ART can also lead to drug resistance, where the drug is not working, and also lead to increased mortality as well as morbidity. Adolescents face unique challenges in adhering to their antiretroviral therapy. For instance, they are dependent on adults to keep their clinic visits, and some of them are in institutionalized settings. For instance, for adolescents in boarding school, it becomes hard for them to take their medication daily without being seen taking the medication. That is fear of stigma. And also, there's some studies, they complained about the pill burden from taking medication daily. Some of them take once daily, others twice, up to 3 times daily. Now, long-acting antiretroviral therapy is a potential solution where the adolescents, the people taking the early ART, receive an injection once monthly or once every 2 months. And there are some others that are still under a trial where you can get an injection every 6 months. Studies have shown that it is acceptable, and there was also improved adherence to LAAT compared to oral ART, as well as viral load suppression. However, there is paucity of data on the impact of LAAT on viral load suppression for adolescents among adolescents in sub-Saharan Africa. I think there's only one study that has looked at it in Kenya. Uganda has approved the use of LAAT for prevention, but it has not approved it for treatment of HIV, and there is a need to determine the potential impact of LAAT on viral load suppression for adolescents living with HIV. So this study aims to determine the potential impact of LAAT on viral load suppression for adolescents living with HIV. So the objective of this study is to determine the impact of LAAT on viral load suppression among adolescents living with HIV in Uganda over 5 years. So from the previous study, from the previous presentation, I was advised to use an SIS model where the susceptible are the adolescents living with HIV, and the infected is the viral load suppression. And the people that are virally suppressed can become susceptible again to viral load non-suppression. And these are the equations that I had thought that would be used. The assumption is that the proportion of adolescents living with HIV receiving ART, that is whether it's oral or ART, will increase from 85% in 2024. I have still not got by how much it can increase. I'm still looking into that. That the suppression rates will remain constant over the 5 years, that individuals not adherent will not be virally suppressed, and that all adolescents living with HIV who are adherent will be virally suppressed. So the scenarios I'm looking at are when there is oral ART, and also when there is LAAT. I think that is the end of the presentation. I'm not sure where to factor in drug resistance. And I think shall discuss it as we go on. Thank you. That's the end of my presentation.
Okay, so I think just you have saved some time, so we have 3 minutes to give you feedback. I want to request you leave your slide on. I want to request members to give you feedback.
Can we please see your model diagram on the equations? There's a slide that had both. Okay. Do you mind taking us through the equations?
So for the change in susceptible, we have mu, which is the rate at which adolescents living with HIV are getting infected. Sorry, mu, which is the rate at which adolescents are getting infected with HIV. Beta, which is the rate at which they are achieving viral load suppression. New S and new I is the rate of death, and gamma is the rate of change from the suppressed state to being susceptible again to non-suppression.
So basically, when someone is infected, they can only die of the disease, right?
Yes.
And no any other cause of death.
They can have
Yeah,
another.
logically, not model, but logically. Someone who is virally suppressed, can they die of other causes of the disease, or it's only the disease alone?
They can die of other causes.
And the mu I is disease-induced deaths or other causes.
That was another thing I was unsure about, because here I'm putting other causes of death. I had not put in death from the HIV.
And when someone is virally suppressed, the odds of death are higher compared to that one who is not virally suppressed.
Yes, the cause of death from the disease is higher.
Okay, then we need to take account of disease-induced deaths because you already have background deaths.
Okay.
Yeah. And then if you're using N, just indicate that N is equals to S plus I, because
Okay.
there's nowhere that shows N. So you can just add, it's called, I've forgotten, but just add, what is it called? Just add an equation indicating that N is equals to S plus I. So that then when you're calculating N, is S plus I at that particular instant.
All right.
It's actually called a constraint. Sorry, I'd forgotten about that name.
I beg your pardon?
It's called a constraint. We need to show what N is, because there's nowhere that we have N in the model. So it's called a constraint. Just put a constraint where N is equals to S plus I. But then someone know that N was a population of the susceptible plus the infected.
Okay.
And did you share the assumptions? Sorry for that. The model assumptions. Okay.
Let me.
So what do you mean by number 3? Individuals not adherent will not be virally suppressed. Is that correct?
I think so. If you're not adherent
Adherent to?
to the art, you will not be virally suppressed, whether it is on LA art or oral art.
So art is the therapy.
Yes.
And if you
So,
don't adhere to the therapy, you will not be virally suppressed, or if you adhere, you will not be virally suppressed.
if you don't adhere to the art, whether it is oral or long-acting, you will not be virally suppressed.
Oh, yeah. Will not be very suppressed. Okay. So
Yes,
that means
yes.
if you adhere to medication, your viral load will go low.
Yes. Although one of the things I am unsure of is, and I don't know whether I should include it, is drug resistance. There are people that adhere, but they got a strain or something that they are not suppressing, irrespective of being adhering. Is that
I think with
something I should
modeling,
consider?
yeah, I think with modeling you can do anything in terms of just trying to make the model more realistic. But you know, you have to understand the more levels you add, the more complex your model. So starting simple is not bad, but if you think it's easy to add, my advice is first do the simple SIS and then add. So after you've analyzed your model and it is stable, add a layer. After you've analyzed and it's stable, add a layer. My only concern is the first assumption, and I'll throw this to other people in the meeting, in the call. I'm not sure if that qualifies to be an assumption, unless you give us a justification on why you think it should be an assumption. Because you're saying proportion of that receiving ART increased from 85 in 2024. That sounds like a background check, literature review, but it's not assumption that will hold for the compartmental model. How does it define the transitions? If we just go to the compartmental, to the model diagram, and we try to think together where that specific assumption will be applicable. I'm not sure, but I don't think it's an assumption. Maybe I stand guided and corrected.
I think I agree. It's not an assumption.
So you just want to ask something, Rebecca. Let's go back to your model. Yes. So what do you want to measure? What's the output?
The output is I want to see whether being on LAAT results in higher viral load suppression compared to being on oral ART. If we give the LAAT, in Uganda, will it result to higher viral load suppression compared to the oral one? How many more people will it, how many more adolescents will it enable to be virally suppressed compared to the oral ART?
I hear you. I hear you. Don't you think that in the compartment of I'm thinking that there is need to break the compartment of so let me say susceptible. This is infected. I'm struggling with this model equation. Sorry, I had a call that interrupted me. I don't know whether other members have commented about this. But I think let's have another conversation bilateral, and we see how to measure what your outcome. So let's give chance to another person to present as we think through your model output. Because from that equation, okay, let's look at that equation. What are you measuring? Okay, what is that you want to measure from that equation? Which inputs are you going to have? Then which ones do you want to see? Robert, do you get my question?
Yes, I do. And I agree. If she wants to compare two groups, then possibly she can think of breaking the I compartment into LRT and the other one, because as it is, the outcome is just those who get virally suppressed, regardless of whether they're in group A or B.
Exactly. That's why I was getting stuck. Yeah, that's why I was getting stuck. And now these equations make sense, but they are not coming out well from the diagram. So we need to redraw the diagram. And
Okay.
if you check on Victoria's work, it will help you align your diagram very well.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, well done, and stop sharing. I thought you'll have some outputs by now, and Tyler, we have what to present. We see how to present to the policymakers, because I don't think you'll have another time to present. But anyway, Elizabeth, do you want to shoot next?
Rebecca
Yes.
sent you something to the chat box, a link to some work, so maybe you can look at it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, you shoot next.
I can, but I also haven't gone to that level that you want of outputs and stuff. But let me share what I have.
Yeah.
So I'm not in PowerPoint today because I'm still very much into literature review and trying to figure out the structure of the model and the layers and what compartments. But my proposed topic is on assessing and addressing COVID-19 vaccination hesitancy among pregnant women in Uganda. I had 4 objectives, and in the previous journal club, the team proposed I focus on only 2. The first one, which is to assess the epidemiology, that's prevalence and determinants of vaccine hesitance among pregnant women.
Just to cut you short.
Yes.
The fellowship you are on is on mathematical modeling. That first, you can always answer it given your affiliation with the NIPH. So I suggest you it shouldn't take your energy. You focus on the second one. That's what you should put for the 3 months now.
Okay. So the focus is now on developing a mathematical model to simulate the dynamics of COVID-19 transmission among pregnant women in Uganda and the impact of vaccination hesitancy on the disease spread. So I'm proposing an SEIR model, and I've been looking at most of the COVID-19 models from different countries and settings, and they've been extending them with multi-vaccination compartments to include vaccination. Since if we do the direct SEIR, COVID vaccination does not directly move you to recovery. So you need multi-vaccination compartments. Then it's through where I'll add hesitancy for model assumptions. I'm not yet there. So what we see there is just initial thoughts, even the compartment parameters, but let me show you what I have so far on the model. I'm thinking about having it layered where we split the susceptible compartments into about 4 parts. So if we start with this one, this is where we're looking at generally all pregnant women being susceptible to COVID-19. We have the exposed compartment, then we have those who get mild or symptomatic COVID-19, then the moderate severe. Then we move to recovery, where we also have 2 parts, those who recover with no complications, then recovery with complications. Since from literature, the vaccines are aimed at reducing the probability of getting complications with COVID-19. So from this main one is where I'm hoping to transition the S compartment into different parts.
Let me just cut you short.
Yes.
No, at least you'll break down.
Okay.
You're biting much. Just narrow down and get a beginning point. Once you have a beginning point, you'll continue climbing. And the same advice Robert gave to Rebecca. We need to, otherwise you'll get swallowed up. So if your focus is to model complications, if your focus, so let's just focus on the first one.
Mhm.
In the last journal club, what was the guidance on your focus question?
There was no guidance per se. If I recall, I didn't have a model then.
Mm.
So I think, yeah, we didn't look into which that much. You talked about looking at the complications that women get when being vaccinated.
Okay, so let's come back here. So for you let's go back to this, to the objective. What
Mhm.
burdening you? What is keeping you awake trust night?
Is the hesitancy. The
People-
fact that
People refuse
yeah,
to go for vaccination.
yes.
That can be answered through social sciences work, through anthropological investigations to understand, to unpack why people are refusing to go for vaccination.
Mhm.
So what do you want to model?
That impact of the hesitancy on the eventual, in case there's like, let's say like some silent transmission, since we don't have like active surveillance, what would that hesitancy have? Like there's already, if you go to like pregnant women have a chance because they're always in the health system. They're always having antenatal visits. There's a chance to always have that interface of them being vaccinated. Like there's the basic uptake of were you even vaccinated before pregnancy? That also is not being tracked. So just thinking about it and what it would have on if there was like an outbreak eventually. What would those dynamics look like when there's still hesitancy and it's not being addressed?
So what you're saying is that you want to show how big the problem will be. No, that is that is infections. How big the problem will be if people refuse to get vaccinated.
Yes, the I and the R as well, because remember they get infected, then some will get hospitalized, some not. Then
So
we'll have those recovering with complications,
because
something like that.
once you look big, I'm trying to go slowly. If you look big,
Mm.
that's the question is, the model question is, and the research question is, and also interrogations will never end. So what you do, we interrogate small, bite it, chew it, and then you go in and interrogate further. Otherwise, if you keep interrogating, you can never start. Now, so let's begin. You're saying that, look, if pregnant women, so the key word there is pregnant women. If pregnant women they refuse to go for COVID vaccination, when there is a resurgence, how big will the problem be?
Yes.
Is that your focus?
Yes, that's it.
Okay. So let's go to your model now. So you realize that your focus just there. So your focus is all pregnant women are susceptible. And they are being exposed to either COVID vaccination. So they are either taking up the COVID vaccination or not. And what you want to see is that I output there. Those who will be vaccinated and those who will refuse to be vaccinated, the output, what you want to see is in that I compartment. You get it, eh? So for you, your focus should be, when you are simulating what in the curve in the output, what you will focus on in interpreting your results will be how many infections will come if at all they get vaccinated, but if at all they don't get, if at all they refuse to get vaccinated. You can begin from there. Then once you have that output and you say, what about if we have 50% hesitance? Or if we have 20% hesitance? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see it.
But for now, let's just
I was
begin.
making it too complicated. Yes, I see it.
Let's just begin small.
Yeah, let me get rid of the complications and the transitioning. Okay.
No, let's
I
just
don't have to split the compartments. I get it now.
So let's hear from other colleagues to give you feedback. My suggestion, let's just begin small. So you go back there, just type in the research question now so that colleagues can see your focus now. Just go down, just under that objective there. So you type the question, the research question now.
Mm.
In case of a research, in case of a new wave, in case of a new wave for, yeah. So for you to be able to model well, you will be able to choose one of the waves, maybe the Delta wave, which was very tough, or you can look at the Omicron, because different waves had different infection rate and the infection rates. But remember, the vaccination is targeting reducing severity of the disease. So you're saying, and severity is on new infections. You could measure severity on the number of new infections reduced. Yeah. So may I think if we begin at that small narrow scope, you will have an output than if you go than the way you had gone. But let's hear from what other members think. You try to put aside all these other objectives here. You can always explore these ones later on.
Abel, can I go?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Elizabeth.
Yeah, this is Elizabeth.
Yes.
Elizabeth, I like your concept very much. I just want your assistance in thinking through this. Please go to your model diagram, and I agree with Abel. You know, it's not a sin to start small, and you'll actually realize even this model as it is, just get to numerical simulation and you realize how much of a mountain it is. So you'll actually prefer having less of the compartments and less of the equations when you go to numerical simulation. Only two compartments or three compartments will give you a lot of headache. Why? Because you can, as Abel said, you cannot get to the end of simulation. You'll have a lot of what ifs, if I do this, if I do this. And all those will give you responses that are very important. Now, I'm trying to think of this. Susceptible are the pregnant women, right?
Yes.
Then when they get COVID, there's the latent period, right?
Yes.
And then they get to the infectious stage where they're symptomatic, or rather they get infected, the infectious stage, right? Now, this can be either mild or moderate. And now you are talking of recovery. Now we'll have one recovery from Abel's advice, right?
We're stopping at I.
We are stopping at I.
Yes.
And so no one is going back to S, no one is recovering.
No, I think they should recover because this severity, the focus, let's have the recovery compartment as well.
Okay.
Okay, we are having one recovery compartment, right? And then you are trying to test, just go back to your new research question. So
This one.
we are trying to assess what will be the impact of vaccination hesitancy on COVID-19 infection rate among pregnant women in case of a new wave. So you want to look at the impact of vaccination hesitancy on infection rates. So you're interested, if we go back to the diagram, here we are interested in the transition from S to E or S to I, whichever.
But if I got Abel right, he said that E is going to be about vaccination, right?
So who is susceptible here? A pregnant woman.
Yes.
And who is exposed? I thought for COVID, when you get exposed, there's a time period before you become infectious. Abel, am I getting it right? Hello?
I see Abel is muted.
Yeah, if that's true, then E are those who are infected, but they are not yet infectious, right? For COVID, if you read the models of COVID.
Yeah.
Now, that means for you to get to E, you've already acquired the infection, only that it's not, you have not seroconverted. So you're not yet infectious, right?
Yes.
But if you want to test the impact of vaccination hesitancy on infection rate, where will that intervention, or rather that assessment, fall in your model diagram? Which transition will be affected? Is it from S to E or I to R?
So ideally, I guess it would be on all according to literature. You would have like a separate exposed but vaccinated. Like even the eyes will be different but vaccinated, because some are going to be like 1 dose, 2 doses, and they would be different from each other. It's what I'm thinking.
So ideally, when you're vaccinated, you can get COVID still, right?
Yes.
But your chances are lower compared to someone who is not vaccinated.
Yeah, to some extent, yes.
If you both come into a contact with an infectious individual, the probability of you getting the infection, given that you are vaccinated, compared to myself, given that I'm not vaccinated. So I can see Rebecca is saying it protects against severity and not exposure. Okay. If that's the case, then if this is a deterministic model, which I believe it is, it's not a stochastic, right? Because from the equations.
Yes.
So then your impact will be more on the severity now.
Yeah, that's why I was bringing in the recovery. It's why I felt vaccination had more of an impact than in the E and I.
Now, if I say hypothetically that someone who is vaccinated will more likely fall under IA compared to someone who is not vaccinated, who will more likely fall under IB. Will that be correct?
Yeah, that's correct. That's about disease severity, yes.
Now, if we still have one recovery without complications for now, as a starting step, then I think the first thing we will do, you first have your model as it is, and you want to check the severity of COVID among pregnant women given vaccination. And then if you have data, then you will have a rate from the data of pregnant women that Uganda has from previous COVID. Pregnant women who are vaccinated and those who have not vaccinated. And you want to check of the vaccinated, how many had mild or other symptomatic, okay? Of the unvaccinated, rather not vaccinated, how many had mild or other symptomatic and how many had the other? And so you'll get the average. And I think then the transition to I what will be affected. But if you want to test the complications again, that will be an advanced layer, which is still okay, because at the end of the day, that is what you want to showcase. But for me, I will go with that as the first layer. And then I just want to make sure that my model is getting everything right in terms of predicting the numbers, in terms of capturing the numbers of infected, just as Abel has said. But what I wanted to drive from the discussion is your new research question. You have to be keen on which transition it's going to affect in your model. If you are clear with that, where it is going to affect the transition that is going to be affected in your model, then I think you're almost there. So then when you're going to simulate all this, you know that, hey, because this is a deterministic model, the transition rate from S to E will stand, but then I'm going to simulate different scenarios between the infected with the mild and symptomatic and moderate. So you say if 10% of the women are infected or rather vaccinated, how many will be mild and how many will be moderate, given my data set? And then you simulate different rates of vaccination up to maybe complete vaccination of the pregnant women. And then the first thing you want to communicate is if 80% of the women, from 80% and above, we don't have any changes. So you're advocating at least, or rather, the target should be 80% in case of a COVID outbreak again, the specific wave, then 80%, given your graphs, you just see that from your graphs and you calculate the significant differences. And then from there, from now, the moderate, rather severe is where we're expecting complications, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, you can add another layer. You see, are we getting in utero complications? Are we getting maternal complications? Because complications, I believe they differ. So you can get the different complications like maternal and in utero complications. And then you want to see how they're affecting that. My other question with that in this model, my first question, because we are basically brainstorming on your model, is you have arrows coming out of the model.
Oh, that's supposed to be death, natural death.
That's supposed to be natural death. And
Yes.
where do we have disease-induced death?
Oh, pardon?
Disease-induced death.
I hadn't considered. I'd stopped at R. Well, initially I had a branch of COVID death, and I felt like it was too complicated.
Okay, let's
So
just think of it. If you have COVID, do you die when you're in E or when you are I? Or both?
You have to leave. You have to leave IB. That this one moderate severe, ideally, and you die from COVID.
Okay, even mild
Like
might
around
die.
it. Okay, might die.
But at a lower rate, right?
Yeah.
So that is very important because at the end of the day, when you're going to discuss your findings, you're also going to discuss the deaths, disease-induced deaths from both. So when you're simulating different scenarios or other different rates of vaccination, remember the deaths averted are one of your of your bargaining chip with regards to vaccination of pregnant women, right?
Yeah.
So please include disease-induced deaths and make sure if your data, you can get the rates from both the two compartments, just include them because that will form a bigger part of your bargaining chip when you're advocating for vaccination in pregnant women. That's it from me.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Robert.
Okay, so Elizabeth, we will such that you can continue engaging with Rebecca wants to give you feedback. Rebecca, you go for it.
No. My question is with regards to the dates that Mr. Robert was talking about, because it seems that for Elizabeth, it is like as a result of the complications. So I don't know if relating it to the study that to the project that I am doing, even me, the deaths as a result of land suppression. So should they be an additional compartment, or can just I don't know. You can just put them next to the natural deaths.
Abel, you can assist me in this, but you see, someone who is recovered cannot die because they don't have a disease. So, and death can only happen in the disease because it's the disease that is causing the death. They are succumbing from the disease. So mostly what models do, you have another arrow besides the natural death in that compartment if you as an endemic. However, for COVID, they rarely do natural occurrences. Why? Because they argue the time span from infection to recovery is small. So they remove background deaths and they just include disease-induced deaths, which is still okay if you have them. But just to answer your question, you'll have another arrow in the infected indicating they might live as well because of disease-induced deaths. Why? Because if you don't do that, you'll have a lot of people transitioning to R and back to S if it's an SERS, or you'll have a lot of people recovering, which is not the case. But Abel, you can help me in that as well.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with your submission. We could chat bilaterally with Rebecca more. Let's have a chance to Nuru to share with us how work she had started. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and keep building. Nuru, over to you.
Thank you, Ebo. Can you confirm if you could see my screen?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, I've tried to look for the PowerPoint presentation, but I think since I switched laptops, I think I didn't carry it, but I have a snapshot of what was there. My topic is assessing the impact of control interventions to reduce postpartum hemorrhage in pregnant women, to reduce maternal mortality, and I'm using a mathematical model.
Nuru, we can't hear you. I think Nuru dropped off. So next week we have Lydia, we have Benjamin, we have Rachel, and we have Alice. Let's give her some time and we see.
Ebo, are you able to hear me now? My network had dropped. Sorry.
Yeah, you are now back.
Okay. In Uganda, 25% of the maternal deaths are due to PPH.
No,
Yes?
we
Yes,
have
please.
only 7 minutes, so you just go to the research question straight, such that we move a bit faster.
Okay. The main objective for this study is to develop a deterministic model which describes PPH occurrence and examines the impact of control interventions using a mathematical model. And in the methodology, I'm intending to use the SEIRD model, which is formulated on basis of understanding the biological mechanism through which PPH can be able to occur. So if I can go to my model, just briefly, let me just share the model. This is my model for postpartum hemorrhage and how it occurs. I have the susceptible inflow rate, which is V, and then I also have the susceptible group, and the susceptible group is all women of childbearing age. I also have the exposed group. The exposed group, these are all pregnant women. And then I have another compartment for infected, which is those women that have had PPH strictly after birth, because in this model I'm looking at only primary PPH, which actually happens within 24 hours. And then from there, after the infected, some of the women can be able to recover, while others can succumb to the PPH. However, even after recovery, women tend to go back to the susceptible compartment where still they be susceptible. They go back to being susceptible. So this is how my flow is, and I'm actually looking at the impact of control interventions. From the last presentation that we had, I had stopped here, and one of the advice that came in was me to go back and look at the various control interventions which are being employed, most especially in Uganda here, and then see how we can be able to incorporate them into the mathematical model. So I've been doing a literature review since then to identify some of the interventions which are mostly done in Uganda, and I've also had a chance to interact with some people in the area of PPH. Depending on my model, I know this one is a natural death due to natural death from the susceptible people. And then also I have a natural death in the exposed compartment. And then of course, some people who are infected or already have PPH will die, but some others will be natural death, not as a result of the PPH. So the result of the PPH is to the death compartment, where those ones who have died from PPH are going. So some of the things that I've been able to come up with my equations here, though I've not yet incorporated in the control interventions. I've been trying out to get the possible control interventions from literature. And as such, I've been able to get these control interventions where I have 5 control interventions. And I'll be looking at one by one, whereby if I take in my model one control intervention like provision of oxytocin, what will be its impact? Maybe on the recovery and then the deaths. Will there be an increment in death, or there will be a reduction? I'll be inserting in like one control intervention at a time, and then I'll also be considering like 2 at the same time or 3, and then I'll also consider like combining all of them to see the best intervention that can be employed in our public health sector to see that we have a reduction on maternal mortality rates. So Mr. Ebo, I think that is where I am today. I'm going to be incorporating in the control interventions and also trying to find out the stability and the sensitivity and then the equilibrium points for my model. Yeah, over to you.
My humble advice is you get one control, one intervention. Just get one. No, anyway, last time Rachel said we can't only do one intervention. So maybe I think last time we said you can just have like a consortium, like a combined interventions, such that we say this is a package intervention A, that is a package A, such a pack. Yeah. So I think you discuss with Rachel such that you finalize that. But you first give us the first output, the dynamics. How does it flow in terms of susceptible, in terms of this? First, give us that output, and then because you in your model question you have two components. You have dynamics and then the intervention. So you first give us the dynamics, and then you can give us the intervention as well. However, we are cutting you short. I request that we stop here.